Hello my dear YouTuber friends, and I do hope you're all keeping well. Welcome to this new video back on the Velcoity One Flightstick. This is my 1 year plus. It's about 1 year and 4 months since I bought this, and I first did my first impressions video on this. The Velcoity One Flightstick. How has it held up over the past year plus? A number of people have been asking me to do an updated video on this, just to let you know how I've been getting along with it. So this is the video. Have I had any issues with it? I'm going to be talking about that and the things definitely that I like and have loved about this Velcoity One Flightstick. I'll also be showing you in this video an ideal setup if you own the Velcoity One Flightstick, and a couple of other peripherals which I'll be showing you in this video. At the end of the video, I'll come back and give you my conclusion and recommendation. Listen, let's not dilly-dally. Let's get on with the video. So how have I found the Velcoity One Flightstick over a year plus of use with it? How's it been holding up? Well, it's been holding up remarkably well. Excuse me, I do have a bit of a cut on my knuckle there. It's just a bit of a graze, but don't worry about that. It's been holding up remarkably well. All the buttons and all the levers and the axis on the stick itself have held up quite well. I'll come back to the stick movements later. I know that's a bane of contention for some people. All the hat switches and goodness knows what and buttons, they've all been fine. Now I'm going to link down below in the description, just because I'll be talking about quite a few of the Velcoity peripheral videos. I'm going to link a whole playlist, a Velcoity One playlist down below in the description. Many of the videos I'll be talking about are in the playlist, including one called Overdrive Settings for the Velcoity One Flightstick. My goodness me, with the help of like shifter buttons, holding down buttons to access different functions on this flight stick. It's been absolutely incredible. I have said this in previous videos. Owning a Velcoity One Flightstick is like owning a mini Velcoity One flight yoke in terms of the amounts of controls and functions that you have on this, and the amounts of functions that you can set on this in Microsoft Flight Sim. And you've probably seen this in other videos, but it has a couple of hat switches which is magnificent and unusual to see on a flight stick for this price. Buttons galore all over the place. Plenty of buttons and different functions and a couple of levers. Yet generally it's all been holding up rather well with no issues with anything. Nothing's been failing on me. There's one thing I'll come back to later, but that's not really a fault of the Turtle Beach or the Velcoity One Flightstick, but I'll come to that part later. Yeah, it's just been holding up rather well. Let's address the elephant in the room. It's that stiffness of the stick that some people simply don't get along with. For me, that's perfect. Now, I guess I'm quite fairly heavy-handed, and I go to the gym quite regularly, so perhaps I'm stronger than I think, and I've just had no issues with the actual stick axis. So the tension of the axis of the stick pitching and your ailerons and goodness knows what. Many people have had issues with that. I've mentioned it in other videos. I'll mention it here as well. It is quite a stiff axis. It's a shame there's not a way for those who want a looser movement. It's a shame there's not a way to loosen that on this unit. I think the only way you can do it is open the stick up and you can do some kind of modding, which I'm going to avoid. I don't feel a need to do that. And unless you're competent with doing that, I wouldn't recommend it. But for me, listen, I'll link another video down below in the description. It's my flight lesson I did a while ago. I think it was the Icarus aircraft, or an Icarus variant. Now, the stick was in the middle of the two seats, so the pilot seat and the co-pilot seat, and the instruments were here on the pilot side and some on the co-pilot side as well. The stick was in the middle. The stiffness of that flight stick was 3 times the stiffness of this. It was actually quite stressful to fly that aircraft. When I came and tried it, after doing the flight lesson, and I came back and tried the Velcoity One Flightstick, I was thankful for a stiffer stick, or a stiffer resistance in the movements of the flight stick. Some of you may not like that. Some of you may want a much linear design in terms of the way it moves, or a linear movement. Just be aware it is stiff. If you compare it to something like the Holtas One, it's a lot stiffer through the axis of that. I've had no issues with it. Many people haven't, but I know some of you have. But all the warning signs were there through pretty much every review video I've seen. It's a stiffer axis. It's a shame you can't relieve that or alleviate that. But for me, it's just about perfect. That's the way, that's the kind of stiffness that I prefer on a flight stick. And it works well. Now, another thing that people have mentioned, and it's something I'll come to here. When using the stick, if you use it on a desk like this, if you're making rapid movements, yes, it can lift up. It's not lifting up for me here, as you can see, but it can do for say. It does do slightly. I don't use the stick like that. I don't use it on a table. Because of the form factor of this, I just have it on my lap. I mean, look, I can hold that very easily. It's quite light. I have it on my lap. I use it two-handed, so I'll have one hand on the stick and the other using the controls, and it just works well on my lap. It's almost like a lap flight stick. A flight stick that you can use on your lap. I know some people don't prefer that. They want it on a table, and I'll be showing you the best mounting option I've found for this so far in just a moment. But that's the way it's kind of designed. For those of you who don't know, it's probably the most comfortable because of this little armrest thing here, handrest. It's definitely the most comfortable flight stick I've used. You can put this on the other side. For those of you who don't know, for the left-handers, I'm ambidextrous, but for the left-handers among you, you can switch this to the other side, and you can use this as throttle if you want, and use this. Let me switch hands. So if you can imagine, I'll show you a picture on screen of that on the left-hand side. So there you go. You can have it either way. Let's just take that off screen. So if you're left-handed, you can have that here, and then use that as throttle, and goodness knows what. You don't find that on many flight sticks within that price range, and that's just genius. Well, like I said, that's typically the way I'll have it on my lap, and it's because it's so light and the form factor is so small, it's easy to do that. But if you don't want that and you want a more rigid stance for the flight stick, so you don't want it to move around, let me just show you something that's absolutely magnificent to do with this flight stick. Now, in my own findings, one of the best way you can mount the Velcoity One Flightstick to ensure that it's not going anywhere, it's going to stay put, is on the Velcoity One Flight Stand. With the Velcoity One rudder pedals at the back. Let me tell you something, when you're flying something like helicopters, this is such an amazing and immersive setup. Go and look at my Velcoity One playlist down below in the description. I show you me using this setup on the Series S flying helicopters. It's like a completely different way of flying. If, like me, you're used to flying with your controls clamped to your desk, like your yoke and throttle and whatever you have attached to that as well, flying on a desk, flying a desk essentially, going from that to this, and then flying something like helicopters or even flying the Spitfire with this setup, feels like you're actually sat in a cockpit. In fact, this makes me want to go and fly helicopters right away. Incredible setup. The links for each of these are down below in the description. My Amazon affiliate links. Essentially, you pay the same. I get a little kickback or a little bit of commission from Amazon. So if you're ever tempted to buy this, and you want to buy from Amazon, do try and go through my affiliate link. Just does me a small favor. But with this setup, my goodness me, you have got one heck of an immersive setup. probably the most immersive setup that I found with the flight stick. Keeps it nice and firm, so if you have issues, you want to use this on a desk or something and you find the flight stick moving around too much as you're moving through the axis, you're not going to find that with this. It just, for all intents and purposes, especially in helicopters, just feels like you've got the controls of a helicopter. So it's absolutely fantastic for that. Before I take you to my conclusion, let me just talk about a couple of issues that I've had with this Velocity One flight stick. One of them is not a fault of the flight stick. I'll come to that in a moment. First issue I've had are the LED lights. Now recently these have been behaving, so I've set them up. Shows slightly different colours on the camera, but this is blue and that's green, so I've set it up that way and all the LEDs are working as intended. That's not always the case on the PC and Xbox console. I found this. Sometimes these lights do not light up. Now, to be honest, I'm more concerned about the functions of the flight stick and using the flight stick in flight. I'm not always looking at the controls or the flight stick when I'm flying, but I do like these, and I like these from the start, so it is nice when it lights up and it just makes the whole thing seem a lot more attractive. Sometimes they don't. I don't know what the problem is there. All the firmware is updated for the flight stick. And I know other people have had this issues as well and are still having these issues. I don't know what the issue is with the LEDs not lighting up, but sometimes it can happen. And like I said, more recently, for the past 4 or 5 times, they've all been lighting up for me, so it's not been an issue recently. But do keep that in mind. It's not just me having that issue, it's other people as well. Other issue is the analog trim. Now this is not a fault of Turtle Beach for this and the Velocity One flight yoke. I'm going to try and link a forum post below in the description that I found some time ago. It was on a different flight peripheral that also uses analog trim. Apparently it's not coded properly in Microsoft Flight Sim. So what can happen is your trim will be set in an aircraft in a specific configuration. You get up in the air, you move that trim wheel, it can either put you nose down in an aircraft or nose way up. And it's easy to amend for with this trim wheel. But sometimes it's out of sync to your trim in your aircraft. Couple of fixes and workarounds for that. Go and look at my playlist down below for a couple of workarounds for that. You can set this to digital buttons. Not as good as digital buttons. When it works and when it's in trim, when it's in sync rather, this trim wheel is nothing better I found on a flight stick in this price range. The same with the yoke system by Turtle Beach. When the trim wheel's in sync, it's absolutely wonderful and pretty much the best on the market. So yeah, a bit of an issue with that, but again, it's not Turtle Beach's fault. It's more to do with the Microsoft Flight Sim itself. It's fine in X-Plane and other sims like DCS World. It's just an issue with Microsoft Flight Sim. So don't blame Turtle Beach for that one. Okay, after I've flown a couple of helicopter flights, I'll take you to my conclusion and recommendations. So conclusion and recommendations. Do I still recommend the Velocity One Flightstick? Absolutely I do. For the value of this, for around that £100, and of course all Amazon links are down below if you do buy from Amazon, down below in the description. For the price of this, I believe it's the best value flight stick available on the market, particularly because it's its ambidextrous design. You don't find that on many flight sticks, and the amount of functions and buttons that are available for you does have a couple of quirks. The LED lighting, yes, it can come on or go off. Not a biggie after a year of use. If they don't come on, I'm more interested in the functions of the stick, but it's nice to have them, and you know, for now at least, they seem to be behaving. The trim wheel, it's not the fault of Turtle Beach or the flight stick itself. It's the analog issues with Asobo or with Microsoft Flight Simulator itself. It just doesn't seem to be coded into the sim properly. Once it is, yeah, absolutely. Analog trim wheels like this are simply the best to use. 100% still recommend this, but maybe if you are concerned, and do listen to our reviews, it is quite stiff, the axis movements of the flight stick itself. If that's a concern for you now, either try before you buy if you can. I don't know if they still do that in stores, let you try things like this. Hopefully, you know, if you go and buy it from somewhere like a high street store, if you could just say, look, can you open it so I could try it before I buy it? You may get the option, or go around to a friend's or something of that sort. I've had no issues. Many people don't, but few people do have issues. It's just a shame. If there was a way of alleviating that tension, this would skyrocket this flight stick to the heavens. This would be an absolutely no-brainer for everyone. Like I said, I don't have issues. I prefer that tension of the flight stick. Some of you may not, so just beware of that, you know, and don't come and blame myself or Turtle Beach if you find it too stiff. That's just the way it is with this flight stick. Yeah, but if you can, try before you buy. I've enjoyed it. I still recommend it after a year's plus. It is the flight stick that I will go to. A quick question for those who use this for their daily flights. I switch between this and my yoke. I use this for helicopters and things like Spitfire and Quickie aircraft. Any aircraft, things like jets as well, I'll use the flight stick. For anything else, I'll use my XPC yoke. For those who use this on a daily basis, have you noticed the tension getting any lighter? Maybe it has a little bit on mine, but I don't think so much. I think I've just completely got used to it. For me, it's never really been an issue anyway. But let me know, for those who have used this for quite a while, have you found a lightening of the tension of the actual stick itself? Do let me know your thoughts below. Do be courteous to me and to other people, please, in the comments. There's no need ever for rudeness. But do let me know your thoughts, good or bad. Give the video a like if you've enjoyed it, subscribe for more, and I'll see you soon.